Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody, in this truly global My Data Symposium that we're at. This morning, as it is for me, we're just about to start talking about scaling the personal data economy, which is, I think, a subject close to all of our hearts who like my data. How are we going to make this work in the real world? Today, we've got two very special speakers, Florian Werner from Mastercard, who's going to talk about the plans for my data from this global corporation. And then following Florian, who will be speaking, and then we'll be doing Q&A with Florian, we've got Sari Stenfors, who's a futurist and is going to stretch our minds, looking even more to what does my data bring in the real world, or could it bring in the real world? And then we'll have questions of Sari, and then both Sari and Florian will talk together, and with yourselves, hopefully, as a interactive session to follow the topic. We've got 75 minutes, so looking forward to that. Florian, whilst I introduce you, could you start sharing your screen so that we maximize the time available? So Florian is the VP of Product Development within Mastercard Data and Services, and he's responsible for exploring the opportunities arising from people-centric data ecosystem, my data to us. He spent the past 20 years in strategy consulting and financial services. And the interesting thing is we're talking to an expert here because he's had data as a common theme all those years of his career. He, like all of us in my data, sees the vision of a people-centric data ecosystem becoming a reality, and he's actually right on the front lines bringing this to life. So, Florian, with that introduction, could you please take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Julian. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you for the My Data team for having me. I've been, roughly a year ago, I've been in Helsinki to participate in the My Data 2019 conference, and I already seen a lot of change from a more theoretical approach to a much more business-oriented and practical approach of where can we bring my data and how do we bring it to the next level. So I'm quite excited to share a little bit our thinking within Mastercard that we have developed over these last 12 months. When you look or think of Mastercard, right, probably many of you ask the question, no, what has Mastercard to do with that topic of my data? And that's a question I get a lot when I talk to partners over these last few months. But the answer is pretty simple, and I put it on a slide here. The first and foremost question or answer is Mastercard is much more than just a credit card company, right? Already today, a third of our business comes from services around analytics, cybersecurity, AI, and data, right? And Mastercard has a long-standing track record of, we build a network, a global network that enables the exchange of payments transactions between different parties. And data has always been a key component of this network. And from early on, Mastercard really established a privacy by design approach to keep personal data safe and as much as we can without PII and anonymous at all times. So it's no wonder that Mastercard is looking into this new network, the network of personal data economy. And we actually went one step further, and I just want to mention this to kind of introduce where we're coming from as Mastercard, right? Sometime early last year, Mastercard introduced what we call our Global Data Responsibility Imperative, where we want to bring together companies and group them behind the idea of core data principles that have the intention to really empower individuals to take control of their data, to keep data safe, to keep data usage transparent and fair, and allow individuals to benefit from their data. So I won't go into much more detail here, but this is really why Mastercard is so keen to better understand the ecosystem and to see how we have a way to play. What is our role in the ecosystem? What we want to talk about today is really how do we create an economy of personal data that leads to more and better data for more and better value. And actually, this is a phrase, a sentence I have stolen or taken over from Julian, because when I met Julian roughly 2 years ago, he presented the idea of what he does and what he believes in and what my data does so well with these simple, what is it, 4, 6, 8 words that kind of say it all, right? What we want to achieve is really more and better data because we believe that the world needs more data to function better, but it must be transparent and fair. And then in the end, we will receive more and better value for all stakeholders. The approach is simple, and I think we all agree on this. It's the individual who is in the center of everything, and the individual, the consumer, should be in control of their data. Why is that the case? Because the individual, the consumer, is the one data source that has access to a very broad and diverse set of personal data, the broadest and the deepest data set available. And if we empower the individual to keep that data safe and private and give them the tools to share data with consent, then we believe that will actually lead to what we're looking for, more and better data, which will keep innovation thriving, have the consumers experience new services, enhance existing one, and really be a win-win for all stakeholders. Now, the question we want to discuss today, and I'm really looking forward a bit to a discussion, get your view, because we don't know the answer yet, right? We have ideas and thoughts and maybe theories, but we don't know what the answer is. And it feels like that the way to scale is really a bit of a chicken and egg situation. On the one side, you have the business. Businesses are very, very interested in getting more access to better data, right? But they're interested to get the access to data at scale. So we have to reach a bigger group, right? We have to make the data ecosystem a mass phenomenon where a lot of people join in. But on the other side, you have the consumer who is actually willing to share their data if they trust, if they feel it's secure, and if they feel they can actually benefit from it. But to get this feeling, they require, or we require, services and solutions, use cases in the ecosystem that will help consumers to onboard into the economy. So we have this chicken and egg, right? Businesses want to join in, but they need a lot of consumers. Consumers want to join in, but they need a lot of services from business. So how do we start this to get both parties involved and lead this to scale? One thing we believe in, there are 3 things that consumers are looking for, right? And pain points we want to address. One is control. Well, how can I take ownership of my data? One is trust, right? There's not currently a little trust of consumers in the ecosystem, in the business world, that their data is treated fairly. And the most important one is probably value, right? They need to see the benefit that they get back from their data in order for them to join at scale. Now, if we go quickly a little bit deeper onto these 3 areas, right? Control, we believe, will be supported by regulation, by technology, and by experience. I think it has shown that regulation can provide the tailwinds to kind of drive all stakeholders in the right direction, in the same direction, and kind of enforce that data becomes more portable and more interoperable. But we need the technology to make this seamless, to make it easy to exchange data, to provide APIs rather than faxes, to make it faster, so we can actually work with it and benefit from it. And in the end, it is the experience, right? How can consumers consume the services based on their data? These have to be seamless and smooth, so they're hooked on and they want to move forward in the ecosystem. Second one is trust, a very broad one, right? And we do think, and what you see from a lot of surveys today, right? The consumer trust into businesses of treating their data right is really at a very low point today. There has been a lot of malpractice. There's constant news coverage of breaches. So people are insecure and feel like, I don't want to share my data, right? I don't trust the ecosystem to really treat my data well. So we have to find a way to regain this trust and to build an ecosystem that is really safe and secure. But the most important one is really, in our thinking, value, right? We want the individuals to benefit from their data. And again, there's a clear consumer view, a consumer sentiment, right? People are aware there's a handful of companies that earn a lot of money based on their personal data. Now they're not really sure that they get the fair share in return. Sure, they get services and solutions that are powered by their data, but is that all? We think there are the three categories of value, of benefit that consumers could get. One is insights. The other one is really new experiences and financial benefit. Insights pretty straightforward, right? And we know a lot of those. In the financial sector, there's personal financial management, right? I bring together my banking data and my other financial data, and I get recommendations how to live a financial healthier life. And then there's healthcare in general. I bring together my medical records, my other hospital information, insurance information, wearable information, and I get recommendations how I can improve my health and what I should do to live a healthier life. There are other areas where people are willing to share data about themselves for insights, because we like to compare ourselves. That could be fitness and sports. How many steps did I take? How many kilometers did I cycle compared to others who live close to me? That could be gaming, stock trading. There are many areas where people are willing to share their data to gain insights about themselves or something else. And then there's the experience, right? By sharing data, we will open the door for new services, new innovation. One example that might be common for some of you is, right, when we were kids and we were to meet friends in the city. Well, what did we do? We said at 3 p.m. tomorrow, next to the burger place, next to the train station, let's meet. So we went there, and if my friend didn't show up by 3:30, what did I do? I don't know, nothing. I was kind of angry and went my way. Today, we share data. We share our location through WhatsApp. And we share it constantly. We share it with friends, we share it with family. We share it with colleagues we want to meet in the city or who don't know how to reach to our office. And we share it with the courier who's supposed to deliver some of the packages, some of the stuff we ordered online. So we share our location all the time to get a really convenient services. We need to have more of those to hook people into the idea of bringing data together and sharing them for a better experience. Last but not least, financially, right? There's a lot of money to be made in data. Personal data is a new asset class. How can individuals participate? That can be that they get paid for their data, maybe, but it can also be simply by better offers, by discounts, by getting something that has financial value in return for sharing my data. So what we've been thinking about the last few months is really, what are these use cases? Because we don't think it's going to be one size fits all, right? Value means many different things to many different people, as I kind of just outlined. So we believe there has to be a subset, a number of use cases that we can bring together that is attractive enough to onboard a broader spectrum of users into the ecosystem. And I want to share just one pretty simple example, one or two that I've been using for a long time now. And this is when we talk about value and we talk about businesses, right? Because businesses also have to provide control, trust, and value. If we look at value, it's simple, right? Merchants, businesses are very aware of data being a core success factor to everything they do. Today, a lot of merchants depend on third-party data because they don't have access to other data, but it comes with many negative points, right? It's often inferred. We don't really know where it comes from. It's collected by data brokers. It might be outdated, less accurate, and worst of it all, it's mostly non-transparent. And when you look at surveys and what consumers actually say about data sharing, one thing they like the least is that when they share data with a company, that they will forward it and share it with another third party, right? This is really blocking the trust that we need for this ecosystem. The alternative is first-party data, right? Many companies try to build a broader set of first-party data that they can generate, infer, and observe from their own customers, which is great. It stays with them. It's kind of proprietary for them, but it might be limited, right? Not every business is in Amazon or in Google and has such a broad range of data access, right? There might be limited access they have from purchase history, from some website interactions, maybe a loyalty program. What we believe, again, no, it's the consumer. If we build a people-centric ecosystem, right, we can solve this issue by allowing the consumer to share their data with the businesses they want to share it. The process is simple, right? You ask a question and the consumer will answer because they believe you that you treat the data securely, fairly. You're not going to share it with a third party, and you get something back. You give something back, some sort of benefit, and therefore the business itself, they will have better data, more accurate, and they can build this trust in the relationship. The example I've been using for a long time, actually, since we started at Mastercard looking a bit deeper into this topic, roughly a year, is this example of a shoe company. This shoe company since, and this is what, July 2019, has been sending me 2 to 3 emails every single week for the past 50, 60, 70 weeks. And they always address me by name. Hi, Florian. Hello, Florian, and so on and so forth. So they intend to be personal. But what they sent me doesn't really feel that personal, right? So I'm from Hamburg, Germany, right? And when they sent me in July an email saying, you know what, the new Bayern Munich jersey is out. That's fantastic. But there's quite a rivalry between the north and the south of Germany. So I really do not care much about Bayern Munich's jersey. But they made it worse. That 2 weeks later, they said, okay, he didn't buy the Bayern Munich jersey, so let us tell him that there is a new Arsenal jersey. Why would I care, right? Why would I care? And to top all of this, and this is the image on the right side, once they sent me a message where I think, oh, this is actually a cool shoe. I like that. I would like to buy it. So I click the link and I click, put it in my basket, and I get the message. Sorry, it's out of stock. You don't have it in your size. So it's such a simple example that by asking me a question, enabling me to share some of my information, what do I like? What is my style? What are my sizes? They could reduce the amount of irrelevant conversations we have and interactions, and actually send me offers that I'm really interested in. So we believe by establishing this ecosystem, right, bringing people who have the data and people who need the data together, and taking out the friction and the insecurity in building trust in the marketplace, well, we can overcome this, what we call here privacy personalization paradox. Again, the idea is very simple. Now, if you want personalization, companies need a lot of data. If you share a lot of data, your privacy is less, right? If you want a lot of privacy and you don't want to share, well, then you can't get a lot of personalization. We think having an ecosystem, a mechanism to share data, your personal data privately and securely, you can maximize both sides, right? The sharing, the personalization, as well as the safety and privacy of your data. And this is where we want to go to. And we kind of laid that out with a very simple example saying, you know what if I allow a retailer to get access to read by permission my Amazon purchase history, maybe my Mastercard transaction, maybe what I do on social media, and even maybe what I watch on Netflix. Well, by doing so, they can tell me, and they can tell me very transparently without being creepy, that, you know what, we noticed you booked a flight to Hawaii. This is fantastic. And we've seen that you're really into beaches and waves, and you watch surf movies when you're on lockdown on the couch. And we've seen you like gadgets. That's why we have this great offers. The new GoPro camera is out, perfect for surfers. And we tell you, these are the reasons why we think you would like it. And this is a fantastic price. So again, it gives value to all participants. It's very straightforward, simply, and takes out the creepiness of personalization. It makes it really approachable. But this is only the beginning, right? Let's spend a minute on where we think this might go to. And I'm sure Sari will talk more about the different aspects that are ahead of us. So Mastercard is in the business of facilitating commerce, right? And therefore, we constantly think of what would the future of commerce look like. And in our topic, right, how can a personal data ecosystem influence the future of our commerce. We see 4 stages: compliance, personalization, then push and ambient commerce. I think in the near term, right, we will reach a stage where there's compliance, right? My data is safe, there's regulation. Maybe I get to a stage where I have zero-party data, so I put my data in a personal data account and I'm able to share it. And because I'm able to share it securely, right, I get really relevant, really good personalization. Well, the next stages we have are a bit further out. We see push commerce as kind of putting commerce on its head, right? Instead of me searching and looking around and comparing what are the best offers for something I like, I can just go out there and have a reverse auction, give a platform access to my needs and say, this is what I'm looking for. So they can send out my information to other parties who then can bid on what I'm looking for and kind of automatically ensure that I get the best product for the best price. This will be even more important in the 4th stage, where we look at 5G, IoT coming, and more of an ambient commerce. So where we have machines talking to machines, and as consumers probably delegating some parts of the decisions to machines. Example here is probably your refrigerator in the kitchen, right? Your refrigerator knows you drink milk, and it knows which milk you drink and how much you drink. It might even have access to your calendar, so it knows when you're in the house or when you're out of town. So once you start running out of milk, your refrigerator can be empowered to start ordering milk for you. So the refrigerator would start a reverse auction, says, my owner likes milk and this milk in this quantity. Please, can you give me an offer? So the reverse auction platform will send offers for this milk product. And the refrigerator, because I gave consent and I have a way to control and share this information with my refrigerator, can automatically not close that deal. Together with the auction platform, it will buy milk and I will end up having milk back into my fridge without having to do anything. I think that is something we will see, and there are going to be more and more connective devices and more services we most likely haven't really thought of today. Now, last but not least, Mastercard's closest partners are obviously financial institutions, right? We work with tens of thousands of banks all over the planet. And we believe that banks actually can play a big role in helping us to scale this ecosystem for 4 reasons, which I put here on the right side of the slide. One is the broad access to consumers. Whatever we do and whatever we have done, and all the players who already work and really come up with great solutions, great ideas, all of them lack scale. We believe that banks can help us scaling the ideas we have, scaling the solutions. And why is that so? Because they have the trust, right? Today, banks keep your money safe, and people might not like banks, but they still trust the banks and keep their money with the banks. So why can't banks also keep your data safe as an asset, for example, in personal data store? Then there's control, right? The aspect of control. Today, a bank issues an account, issues a credit card, a debit card, issues something to provide you access to financial services. Well, in the future, couldn't the bank also issue a personal data account, which then provides you with the access, right? The platform, the tools to enter the personal data economy. And last but not least, value, right? Today, a bank is there to help you make the most of your money, either through interest because you're safe or through better rates for lending. Well, if we believe that data is an asset, couldn't there be something like data asset management, where the bank also helps you to take care of your data and to make the most out of it? So we think there's a lot of factors, scale, trust, but also the connections, the control, and what they've done in the past, that banks have a great opportunity to play a big role in bringing this to scale. And we just underline this with some research, right? There's a lot of research around this topic out there. And wherever you look at, right? And when people are asked, who do you trust most with your personal data? Banks, most or all the time, come out at top. So we feel really, really powerful that this piece of our partnerships is a great opportunity to scale up the ecosystem. And I just give one example here towards the end. It's really about access, right? We don't think banks will be the ecosystem, right? There will be an ecosystem with an endless amount of players and service providers on top of it. But we still think to scale it, especially at the beginning, having one trusted entity that can be the access point to such an ecosystem could be with a financial institution. They can help you with a dashboard to bring your data sources together, a means to control, to see your consent history, what did you consent when, to whom, and to revoke it if needed, but also provide you with new experience, insights, in the end, sort of value through a marketplace for sharing data. So this is where we are today. And this is where I actually want to end my short journey through what Mastercard has been thinking of over the last 12 months. Again, to summarize, we believe data is important, and it's important to empower individuals to take control of it and keep it privately by design. And we believe with our expertise as building a network and the partners with merchants and banks on the other side, now we have a vision of how we could play a role in helping to scale this ecosystem. Julian?
Thank you, Florian. Fascinating. And I think it's really very, very interesting to see such a global company wanting to adopt My Data principles and looking at how, by adopting those principles, they can scale and provide new services and things like that. Couple of things that you said that I think brings out some important points. Value means many different things to different people. And what are we going to share, what you call our zero-party data we have for? And the fact that for some it might be a service, for others it might be a convenience, it might be a reward, it might be all sorts of things. And thinking about how that value applies across the piece is definitely key, and great to see Mastercard being part of that. So if people have questions, I've seen a couple in the chat, but if you could go back to Quico chat or have that open on another screen, you'll see that there is a question and answer system there and the ability to vote up questions, etc. So Florian, with your permission, I'm going to ask you a few of the quite persuasive questions that they come in. And this is one that must be top of mind for a lot of people. We're talking here about sharing data with more entities, as you said, more and better data for more and better value. That means sharing more, doing it in a consented way. But as the question says, how do you know for sure that companies are not selling your data? Do we have a way to check, or are we supposed to just trust the word of the companies? How do we know that once we enter this brave new world, everything is going to be okay?
I think that's really one point that we have to, well, we have to dig deeper, and we have to use technology to help us with, right? There will be ways in, be it blockchain or others, to control the journey, the flow of the data, and to know where it went. This is not perfect and doesn't work for everything yet, right? Obviously, the contracts that you have with the person you share your data with, and there's means of controlling those and making sure only the right things happen. But I think the governance of the ecosystem is important, the checks and balances on who has access, and also a little bit the question of how do I protect the consumer themselves, especially if a company like us is stepping in to be part of the ecosystem, right? We don't want anyone to come and says, you know what, give me everything you have about yourself and I give you a week of free soft drinks at McDonald's, right? We have to make sure that there's governance of the players who are in the ecosystem, and that we set clear rules of the road, what to do and how to treat the data. And yes, I'm sure that in the near future, we'll see those technology enablers that will help us also making sure that those things do not happen. But it's a very important part of the ecosystem. I fully agree.
No, it definitely is. And as one of the providers here, I know that transparency in the consent process and being very clear what happens is important. But of course, also laws to crack down hard on those companies that do abuse the system. So you talked a lot about banks as a key enabler in this scaling. Have you actually talked to the banks and what are their reactions? So where are you in that journey of working with the banks for this scaling purpose?
Yes, we had quite a few conversations with banks, mainly in Europe and North America, and we get very positive feedback. So I think banks are very aware of not the value of data, the asset class of personal data, and the opportunities that arise. They start from the straightforward idea of saying, well, if I could use this, I would know my customer better, right? I can use this to understand my customers better. All the way to the range that they really stand behind the principles also of the My Data organization, saying, you know, this is an ecosystem where we empower individuals, and we as a bank can take on this responsibility to help bring this to life. So we have a broad range of reactions, but all of them have been very positive. Obviously, there's skepticism, right? They're saying, this will take a while, right? This is not ready tomorrow. This is a journey. This is a long-term vision. And I think we do see it with open banking, right? Open banking has really picked up the last 12 months as everyone went digital. But it's still at the beginning. And we've been looking in open banking for a long time. So open banking is kind of showing us the journey, also with tailwinds from regulation. But banks, through open banking, understanding the direction, and I think understand the need to be involved and to think of how they can position themselves.
That's good. I mean, good to know that it's they're looking in the right directions and go from there. There's actually another question here about other actors starting to build the ecosystem. For example, telco operators. Actually, it says and credit card data loyalty programs. But so you mentioned banks. Who else do you think is in the first wave of trying to bring this out?
So in general, I think what you need is scale and trust, right? Those are important to onboard new customers. So telcos, I'm certainly convinced have the ability to provide that. People usually would trust their telco. I still think they trust banks more, but telcos are very trustworthy and they have obviously a huge scale and reach. Well, I also must admit that any big tech today could probably build this much faster, maybe even better, but they might lack the trust, right? Trust of regulators, trust of consumers. So we feel that banks have a unique position because of trust and scale. Obviously, telcos have the device, right? They have the device, they have even bigger scale and the app. So they're also a strong player that can bring this to life, yes.
Okay. And final question before we look further to the future and get our minds stretched by Sari, who will be starting very shortly. What do you think are the three key success factors to scale the ecosystem? So if you had to pick three key things, what would you pick? Is from this great menu of things you can do, I'm going to pin you down to the ground and say, what are the three?
Well, so the thing is, consumers, they say they need trust and control and they don't feel safe. But in the end, right, we all know how lazy we are and how quickly we click on accept and okay, just to get a, do you want to manage your data, your consent properly? We don't want that. So I think it is really the value angle that we have to crack. The value of convenience, right? It must be a seamless experience and it must bring me a better service, something that really is one of these killer applications that helps me understand why this is a good thing to do. No one really wants to manage the data per se, right? We need to find the answers. What are the use cases where in a seamless way, I bring data together, I share it, I feel good sharing it because I get something back. So to make this really a scaled ecosystem, no, this is the thing I hope we will be able to crack. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 use cases that are attractive to a broad range of customer base and giving them the means to really have a great experience and seamless experience using them. I think that's the one. And if we have backing from regulation, because many of these data sources, they're supposed to be available, but it's not as seamless. Well, I think if we have regulatory backing, it will obviously help as well.
So that's a key point about making it seamless and easy for the user. People aren't going to move unless it's made easy and there's good value use cases. Florian, thank you very much for that. You're going to come back in and have a general panel type chat after our next speaker. Sari, if you want to start sharing the screen and getting yourself ready while I introduce you. So Sari Stenfors, an amazing lady who I've had the pleasure of talking to many times, is a strategist and futurist. She has a PhD in business technologies and is one of the Forbes 50 leading female futurists. Sari does a lot of work with the Silicon Valley My Data Hub, and in fact is one of the founders of that, and has been a long-time supporter of the My Data movement, and has a passion to build bridges that take us to, as she sees, positive futures. In discussing this talk with Sari, she was very keen to point out that whilst psychologically we may like dystopian futures or tend towards that she's very much into a positive future. So I'm looking forward in the next 10 minutes to Sari suggesting, thinking, and making us think on the future of the My Data movement. Sari, over to you.
Thanks so much, and thank you, Julian, and thank you also, Florian, because I got a lot of great things from what you were talking. Your presentation was great. Hey, I'm super excited to be here again at the My Data conference. So hi, everybody. I tried to scroll up and down here, and I saw some friends, a lot of friends in here. So thank you for coming to this session. I'm here up in the mountains of California. There's up at Lake Tahoe, and I think 1 mile high or so, 2 kilometers high, and it's beautiful, and data is flowing. It's good. So I think we're supposed to be talking about scaling up My Data, and I think it's a super important discussion. Last year at the conference, a lot of people were excited about the jumps that we had taken forward with different technologies to help with My Data. But also there were some that were not so happy. We were going too slow, and they were trying to figure out what could we do to scale up the movement. So I would like to share what I have learned during this year, and please humor me in following this, because you'll have to use your imagination here. Okay, so first of all, I would like to, as a futurist, I have a set of tools to get people thinking about the future in different ways. But one really important tool is history. When we understand how time works, how history works, we understand also how the future works. And here, I think last week, New York Times had an article about this Japanese shop that is 1,020 years old business. And this is very timely, especially here in the US, where businesses are going bankrupt because of the COVID close downs, and all over the world now. And but what this talks about is how this family that has been running this shop actually has focused on tradition and stability over profit maximization. So it's quite interesting how you can continue a business by just wanting to save a tradition. So I'm really into creating positive futures that include my data and my data type of thinking. But it's really hard for us humans. We're not set up. I don't know, that must be some caveman thing or something, that we're not made to really be able to create visions and understand futures that are far away. Somehow our caveman brains are made to get entangled into dystopian futures. And we're really keen on Hollywood movies that are dystopian, and we love Black Mirror, and very often these technology solutions turn in our minds into dystopian futures. And it's so much harder for us to think about positive futures. And I've been thinking why, and I've really looked at a lot of research, but it's still not really clear to me. But what I do know is that I really don't want to scale up stuff that turns into a dystopian future. I want to scale up stuff that turns into a positive future. And I think my data is one of them. But how do we create a vision that we know how this is going to turn out to be something positive, and how do we actually scale up happiness? Okay, so I'm using from my Futurist toolbox some tools to create visions. And some of these tools are from anthropology, but just doing anthropology backwards. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, using an anthropologist's tool called Imaginaries, and doing future backwards for you guys. And in these future backwards things, you take some artifacts or people's lives from the future, and you bring them to this day. And small is big, because actually the vision, it's really hard to think about a big vision, but it's not so hard to think about like little people's lives. Like this little shop that had survived for 1,000 years, it was little people's lives. Generations, you know, mothers and fathers and children had been working at this little shop. And it was little people's lives, their happy moments, their sad moments, and whatever they did that kept it alive. That's also what's going to happen in our future. It's little people's different life experiences and happy moments and sad moments that will keep it alive. And what will be like that? What will be keeping my data alive thousands of years? So there's a lot of proof that visions do work. You know, Google and the Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, and even the Barcelona data sovereignty, that they're very visionary concepts that actually work. And it's quite easy when you have a vision to figure out what you need to do next. Okay, so now we're visioning my data. Okay, so these are little artifacts from the future. This is from a tweet from 2100. And of course, it's not got called a tweet then, but it's called something else. And I'm gonna read to you a diary snippet from this person that you see in the picture on March 2100. I'm so excited about this. I had been dreaming about talking with animals for years. And finally, my communication package arrived. First, I got the antennas and earpieces installed. And then I had to wait for 3 weeks for them to grow. I had practiced listening already before, but now I'm trying to make sounds too. That's so much harder. We would not be able to do this if we had not shared data about human learning. This really has changed my world. And this is a tweet from November 2082, and I'm gonna also read you the diary snippet that this person wrote. Celebration time, my love. We have come to an end of one era. Now 3 billion people have started companies and movements to build zero waste culture and green data economies. These concepts have now become everyday life, and I cannot even remember what we had before this. We danced all night. We celebrated the 30th anniversary of green data. Go green. This is a tweet from September 2039. And the diary description says this. My new AI friends arrived today. Hurrah! The quality of my life was improved right away, immediately. They will take care of running my finances and helping me in my work. I was so tired. We already started working on my favorite quote. The dignifying powers are the driving force of the effective powers. We are now working on the ethics law amendment to Asimov's law of robotics. I'm super excited. Personal data rights to humans and robots are an essential part of it. Okay, that was it. 3 little snippets. So we created these little snippets in my Imaginaries workshop some time ago, and I have thousands of these. So it's quite easy for people to create something like this. And these work, as Florian was saying, what are the use cases? So Florian, these are the use cases for you from the futures. These personas can create these use cases, and we can figure out what kind of technology they need to be happy. What kind of technology could our society need to be happy? So I really go for that use case thing and what adds value. How do we get, like, the insights, the experiences? How do we do that? But how do we do it in a long-term way so that we actually scale up happiness and not the Black Mirror incidents in our society? Okay, that was it.
Sorry, that's wonderful. It's the simple things in life that make us think. And can I just ask anybody, if you have any questions, to please put them into the Mentimeter piece, the question piece on Kiko Chat. So sorry, I mean, you're there talking about thinking of the small things in the future and sort of working backwards. And that's sort of, challenging for some of us to have to think of those small things. So you said you did a workshop and you've got hundreds of these really rather interesting use cases. And yes, I'd love to talk to the animals. Being a Dr. Dolittle has always been something I would love to do since I was a small kid. But how do you go about then doing that imagination? Because you make it sound easy. Yes, we're going to grow antennas. And you even made it sound as though I could even understand the technology. There's a brain implant and maybe some DNA change or something, and the way I go and I'm doing it. But that in itself is getting to simplicity is hard. So how do you go about imagining those things for the future that then allow us to think about the technology to get there? What's the steps you do for that piece?
So for this one, we used a tool called Imaginaries. It's a tool that is used in sociology and anthropology. And I just use all the tools backwards. So, there's a lot of tools. The academics have been working on them. Science has it all for us. So we actually don't have to we don't have to be that smart, or, the tools are there. This is super easy. We just need to set our mind that this is what we want. We want visions. We want happy visions. We want positive visions. Because if we don't have these visions, it easily turns something that we don't want. And people are really scared of technology. So this really helps. This helps with the trust.
Well, I like that. I have to say that in my Skype profile, it just says always happy. So I'm a great believer in being happy. So one of the questions we've got is, so you're the founder, one of the founders of the Silicon Valley chapter of My Data. You've been thinking about these future happy visions. So using your methods, do you have some ideas on how we can scale the My Data movement? If you had to, in the thinking that you've done, what are some of the ideas you've had about scaling the My Data movement?
So I really think that those my little tiny cases that made you guys smile, they actually they contain the answer to that, Julian. So how do we make my data really important part of those funny use cases in the future? Like really to be able to speak animal languages or something, we really need to learn more about learning, and we really need to know about like everyday learning of people, and we have to share data. If we don't do that, I don't think we can do these big leaps in the future and learn more about ourselves if we don't share data. So I think what needs to happen is my data needs to make itself essential part of these future positive futures. And it's pretty easy after that to derive it from there.
Okay, well, we're sort of entering the period of time now when we're sort of going to have a panel and interactivity. So Florian, don't stand back. No, you don't. So we'll come in. But I'm going to give the opportunity. Does anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question directly or make a comment? Kieran's come off. Kieran, far away. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, Julian. Thanks for this. I think the key issue here is how do we get people to care about their personal data and actually engage, right? I mean, we have these new tools that all of us are talking about, saying, okay, we got to empower them with these tools and so on. But do people outside of our sphere of people who care about privacy? How do they look at it? Will they really look at it and say, okay, I'm going to take full charge of my personal data and I'm going to spend, 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day to manage it? How do we get them to care about it in the first place?
Florian, you talked about not managing data. So do you want to answer that question?
Well, it is, I think it's really the crux, right? So everyone says that they actually care about the data, but then no one does. Right, and that's why it is really so important to find the use cases that people want to do and want to participate in, and by doing this, they care about the data without really noticing that they care about the data. And I do like, I mean, the example Sari had, right? Even though they're out of this world, and I'm not sure if it's already in, what is it? In 19 years, I have AIs running around my house helping with the things. But there is so much of a truth that as we produce more and more data, many of these additional data sources of produced data will be in silos, right? And we can only get to your visions and your ideas if this data gets out of those silos. But to Kieran's point, I don't have the answer yet, right? I think for me, it is come up with the right use cases that people don't really feel that they're actually caring about their data, but they do it because they want to make use of a service, a use case, of solution, of something that helps them make their life better.
Sari, do you have a view on that particular question?
Yes. So so I really believe in thinking about positive futures, and yes, my data needs to be part of those positive futures, and exactly like Florian said. So so research shows that if we believe in positive futures, we get immediately 5 to 30 years more life expectancy years. So 5 to 30 years just in believing in good positive futures. And I think tying my data to those good positive futures is a really good idea, like really making my data concrete, how it's going to help us in these positive futures. And you know, the research shows also that it doesn't have to be that those futures come true. You still get the 5 to 30 years more. So things can go wrong, that's fine. But what really matters that we paint these pictures of positive stuff, and we make clear that my data is part of that it's like the structure, because you don't think about so much of like how your city is run every day. You think more like how is your life happy there, and then your, you know, the infrastructure there, which would be my data, it's just, you know, the water is running and you don't think about it every day. My data runs and you don't think about it every day.
It's very interesting. So I think We do spend sometimes too much time talking about the damage from the past, the big companies, or talking about overcoming privacy. And what you're both effectively saying is we're not spending enough time painting the future, which would encourage us to move on that path to the future. So if we painted a future, and in Florian's view, if we've got use cases which we care about, then managing our data, or not managing it, but sharing, getting, and then sharing our data will come for the ride. So rather than being the driving motivation, it'll be the requirement for us to want that use case or that positive future. And I have to say, from DigiMe's perspective, that we've been doing for many years, we know that only 10 to 20% of people are natively interested in their data. So that's, for me, a nice answer to how you get the other 80 to 90% of people onto the path. So thank you for that. Anybody else want to come in directly with a question, with an observation or thought? If you just come off mute. Mindart, are you off? Actually, yes, well, Bo first, and then Mindart, if you're off mute to ask a question, I'll come to you second. Bo, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, I think this is a very interesting start of the day because, well, I obviously come from the 30 years in banking and card business, so we have seen many attempts to actually make life easier for people to follow how much euros they're spending. And now we also see that some loyalty program tell them how much CO2 they use, and I think that is going to be a very, very important issue. And naturally, when the purchase lines are reported in VNT anyway, you just add the CO2 element to it and you can get your CO2 spending from all shops, not only from the loyalty program. This is doable. There's no question about that. But then you also get the situation that you can actually see how much a country is spending on a daily basis, CO2 and money, type of shops, type of goods, type of buyers, type of sellers, how it interact to the daily real-time income follow-up that we actually have in Finland now. Real-time income of all sorts, soon, not quite yet, but soon all sorts, now salaries, and how the money is going, how much is spent on a daily basis, how much is not spent, where is it invested, the thing that isn't spent, the daily turnover of all enterprises through the real-time VAT reporting, all that. And the European Commission became very interested in this big 4 screens scenario that I had the privilege of presenting at some point at the Internal Market Advisory Committee. And that's the way it's going. And this is not going to be expensive even, because we are talking about side flows from the purchase lines that have to be reported anyway. So fantastic opportunities for big data. And I think big data is actually more important here than the human data. But when you think about responsibility and CO2, we need to do that, no doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. So Florian, following up from that, so we're talking obviously about the personal data, you talked about the insights, and we've now got mass insights. Are you doing anything in looking at how these new flows can help with the bigger insights and the sort of societal insights?
Well, 2 things to it, right? I definitely think that whatever we discuss here and whatever is impacting personal data is valid for business data as well, right? And the ability to make data interoperable and portable and move it and share it now will improve processes and services across. And the other point in regards to sustainability, that is actually something even Mastercard is looking in. And exactly as you, I think, described it, right? We are piloting and partnering with companies who can take, from our perspective, a payments company, take your transactions and what you did bought, acquire, use for travel or so on, and translate that into CO2 transmissions, right? So that you can actually share your data, your transaction data, and get in return insights on what's the impact on the environment based on the transaction you did. So yes, this is where things come together.
And Sari, any comments or thoughts on that subject?
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, no problems. Mindart, you're unmuted. Do you have a question or a comment you'd like to make? I'm not sure, so I'll pass on that. If anybody else would like to make a comment or thought, if you just unmute yourself, I should be able to see you on the screen and suddenly say. And so, Ian, you've come on board. Please fire away with a comment.
Yeah, this is mostly a question for Florian, but anyone feel free to chime in. Mastercard was one of the primary funders of Tim Berners-Lee's research into solid, which he talks about a lot as sort of like a new standard identity, privacy preserving sort of data storage technology. How do you see that fitting into, Mastercard's vision for sort of the my data vision for how data works in the future?
Yeah, absolutely right. So we supported Sir Berners-Lee very early on in developing Solid at the MIT, and we are ever since in pretty close contact with them. We have regular interactions, and as Mastercard is also working in silos in many cases, there are different pieces of the business that today are still working with them. There's the part where we work with NGOs and try to use his approach to help NGOs sharing data about refugees or handing out subsidiaries. We have discussion with him, how can we start trying to pilot and test things, because it is actually, what he envisions is the right thing, and it's providing this platform that enables it. Now the question is, what are the use cases that we can put onto it? And yes, so across Mastercard, there are different groups not working with them and discussing and brainstorming, exploring what the opportunities are. But no, similar to Julian and DigiMe, there are a few of those players out there who have a lot of potential to making it happen. What we just need is the right use case.
Okay, so Sari, sort of moving forwards on that, we're here as My Data, and you're encouraging people to think about the use cases in the future or the situations and come backwards. But we need to scale. That's the subject of the forum today. And to scale, as Florian's pointed out, we need big companies, not necessarily the other technical companies, but banks or others to come forwards. Some of the big companies are not known for innovation, some of these companies. So how do you bring your futurist ideas of what they should be thinking about and then imagining, and how do you bring that to some of the bigger companies that perhaps would, well, let's say they're not used to that type of thinking. So how do you bridge that gap into those companies?
Let's ask Florian right away. He comes from a big company. Florian, would you be interested in my dreamt up use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I actually believe some of them might actually come true, So I'm hopeful that we have, well, we need some baby steps up front, but it takes those visions to get there in the end.
So I really believe that if we start having those visions, because the problem is that we don't have the visions. So if we really start building the visions, it's quite easy actually to create the steps to get to the visions. What we can dream up, we can build. So the challenge right now in the world is more of the visions, the lack of positive visions, not that we wouldn't have already innovations and we wouldn't be able to put it together. If we know what we're building, we're going to get there. So, and I don't think the problem is that the big companies wouldn't be interested in it, but I think we really need to somehow, bring the evidence of these use cases in a way that they seem tangible and we could actually create them. Well, Florian right away bought some of them, wanted to make them better, which is even good, like even better thing. So I think with Florian, we could make these use cases better and we could start working on them.
That's quite interesting because if, having been on the board of My Data for a couple of years and now standing down and handing over the reins to others, but it's interesting that there's a certain amount of time is spent looking at the privacy, looking backwards, saying, oh, it's been bad, we need to improve. There's a certain amount of time spent on the technology, but we probably aren't spending much time in saying, how can we together create this vision of the future, this positive vision, which will drag or pull people into that new vision. So what you're effectively saying is we should be spending some of our time painting that picture of this positive future and how it's enabled by my data. And that's something we're perhaps not doing enough. So I think that's a key thing that's coming out of that. So thank you for that. Akio, you've come off mute. Do you have something to say?
Hi. Yeah. So, Julian, just to add to a point, one of the challenges that I see, I come from an ad tech background. I spent 20 years of my life in ad tech, and I realize this is the time for consumer privacy now, is that when we talk to people and say that in the industry that data belongs to the people, the first thing they do is to point to the laws, right? So most of these guys are sticking to being compliant and trying to get the lawyers into the play, bringing them in front and saying, you know what, we're getting people to opt out as long as they're opted in, especially here in the US. It's all fine, right? So we don't need anything special. We don't need the consent. We just need them to tell, okay, if they're not interested, they can click the buttons, do not sell or opt out or whatever else. So, I'm just trying to figure out as to how we can sort of bridge this gap and make people more aware that, the laws are going to get tighter in the future, but people are not buying at this point, to be honest.
There you go. That interesting point. And in fact, interesting that we haven't, in either of your presentations, talked about advertising and the use cases very much at all. So Florian, what's your response to that point?
Well, obviously another very valid point, right? The ad tech ecosystem is such a advanced and comprehensive end-to-end ecosystem, right? That they will not go away anytime soon. And it's something Mastercard has been part of it, right? Where could we add our aggregated, anonymized information into the ecosystem? So something that it's valuable. And yes, there is a movement towards privacy, right? To limit access to these things. And I think it will come over time from two directions. One is the awareness of the consumer that this is maybe not the right approach. And the other one is what we also, I think, see is the fatigue of bigger companies from the quality that they get out of the big platforms and the big players, right? They're not really, some of them are black holes. How good is the reconciliation of data? And they're looking for alternatives. But there are no alternatives at the moment, right? That's why we need scale. The ad tech system is such a huge scaled ecosystem. And we're not anywhere near to compete with that. So as long as we don't have scale, it will be very challenging to compete with ad tech.
Thank you. So we're running towards the end of the session with another 7 minutes. So I'm going to ask you both, Florian and Sari, in a minute for your closing remarks. I'm just going to do a couple of admin things. For everybody who's been on today, if I could ask you, and I'm sharing my screen here afterwards, to go back to the Quico chat and click on the share highlights button. Any highlights that you've had from this session would be very useful for everybody else, including those people who will be watching this video. We're global, truly global. I mean, Silla doesn't seem to be sleeping at any point in this session. We're running from 5 in the morning UK time to past midnight UK time, and that's a lot there. So if you could make your comments on that. I've been in this a long time, but been opened as well. I think it's interesting, Florian, you talking about the value we provide and how that will bring people to my data. I love Sari's phrase, what we can dream up, we can build. So a little anecdote, when I was 6, I wanted to go to space, and I dreamt of going to space, and I thought the only route was to become a NASA astronaut. and Virgin Galactic and others have created another route. So I will be going to space. Who would have guessed when I was that could happen? So if you can take someone like me to space, I'm sure we can make my data happen. That's for sure. So with that, what's your vision and the use cases, and any final comments, Florian, for before we close this session?
Well, I'm quite excited about the development we've already seen, right? And I truly believe that this is the journey we will all take, and we will get and succeed in the end. And for a company like ours, Mastercard, right? I think we have the right vision of doing the right things and succeeding on a business side as well, right? So RJ always talks about by doing well by doing good. And this is one of these aspects, right? Where we can do the right thing to build an ecosystem where everyone can actually benefit in the end. And it won't happen overnight. And we need more companies and more ideas, more people to come in. But I think in the end, we will reach the idea Sari pointed out.
Thank you. Sari, any closing remarks from yourself?
Yes. So I know very little about the water that comes out of my tap, how it gets there, but I get really good quality water up here in the mountains. I think there's a lot of work that has gone into water coming out of my tap, even hot water I get. But I know very little about it. So I believe that my data is infrastructure. For the regular people, it's going to be like the water that comes out of the tap, cold water, hot water. I can blend them even. And the pressure is right and everything is good. And I don't have to think about it because I can go on with my life. But somehow we need to describe the life that happens when my data is part of the infrastructure. What is possible now that the water comes out of my tap? I can get it at any point, and I can water my plants. Life is really good. There's a whole lot of things that I could describe that I can do because water comes out of my tap. I think we really need to start describing that and really start building that infrastructure. We're ready. We can do it.
Excellent. Thank you. We have 3 minutes. We've been so much on time, courtesy of 2 presentations, which were mind-stretching and exactly to the point, that I'm going to allow the audience to have the very final word. So 2 people, preferably those that haven't spoken, would be great if you can just give me a sentence to finish off with, if anybody would like to take up that challenge. Neil, far away.
Yeah, the one thing I've noticed is in Canada, banks are and credit cards in Canada are very willing to forgive and excuse fraudulent actions with your credit card. One of the things as a community association president is that, people could drain a bank account because the banks don't even check the signature on on a check. And so there seems to be a reliance on the banking and credit card industry right now on, the insurance and lack of huge volume of these kinds of fraudulent acts to cover off what's going on. And that's a bit disturbing. And it's not clear how that's going to scale with digital identity.
Okay, so thank you for that. So there are challenges that we've got to face as we move forwards to the actors that are there. And then I do think that Sari is making the point about the positives. So we're going to have to make sure that as we move forwards, how we can avoid the negatives that we've had in the past, but actually then bring the positives. So a good point. Thank you. And does anybody else want to have the last word, or is the last word going to be me?
Sorry, Julian, can I just have
take the last word.
I think one of the things that, as Florian mentioned, that it would be large companies like banks who will come in. I think a lot of change will be driven by startups who will probably think of a few more killer ideas, which will probably be tried, and then some will die, many will die. but I'm sure that some will succeed as well.
Well, there we go. And I'd like to re-emphasize that. I'd like to think that some of the startups are going to scale very, very big as being one of those. And I think, like all of these things, it's going to be a symbiosis between the existing companies and the new companies, bringing it together and going from there. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this plenary session. There is so much more on the agenda today and tomorrow. And you can listen to it wherever you are. In fact, I'm driving tomorrow to pick up my daughter from university, and I've got 8 hours in the car. So I tell you what I'll be doing in the car is listening to the various sessions. And of course, a reminder to everybody that you'll be able to come back to this session, look at any of the other sessions on videos, etc. from there. So please don't feel as though if you can't be in a session today, you can't pick it up. So with that, and we are dead on 6:15, and Silly said, try and keep to time for everybody. I'll say thank you very much indeed, everybody, for participating. Thank you so much, Sari, for stretching our mind as to the far future, and Florian for showing us that big companies actually do care and have a route to helping us scale this. And let's all envisage a really good future. Thank you very much indeed. And good morning.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Very good session. Thank